Hey there everyone, Dave here for another Social Blade YouTube tip of the week, and today we're going to be talking about chroma keying, which is the use of a green or blue screen behind you to make that green or blue transparent. What can it be used for? Well, there's a numerous different list of things that you can use this for, and some very interesting. In fact, when you watch movies these days and you see a really huge scene where, say, the end of a bridge is cut off because a bomb fell on it or something, and the bridge is just collapsing, and there's actual people that are in the foreground and the background, well, that's usually composited together with the use of a green or blue screen set, as well as real people in the foreground, so that they don't have to digitally animate everything, which makes it more realistic in terms of everything production-wise, and it also makes it a really easy way to sort of combine and produce things. So that's the more advanced way of doing things, but what can you do when it comes to home production like this? Well, you can stand in front of a green or blue screen, put yourself in a digital set, or in front of a motion digital backdrop loop, which adds a little bit more dynamic feel and look to your production. Rather than just having a solid green or gray or black background, you can really spice up your productions there. Well, what do you need to get started with all this? Let's break it down, starting with the camera. Now, the nice thing about camcorders and everything these days is, well, pretty much any of the technology out there can handle it. So you don't need an expensive $2,000 or $1,000 camcorder to shoot in front of a green screen or a blue screen to key yourself out. Sure, it does help a little bit to have a more expensive camera that handles things in more detail, but in general, let's go over some of the more basic things that you're going to want to look into when shooting with, say, a camera phone, or even just a simple $100 or $200 camcorder yourself. The first thing you want to set, of course, is your modes. You want to try to get everything into a manual mode. This includes your white balance and exposure. So learn how to set everything into a manual mode. That's going to really help with trying to keep the camera from adjusting itself so that this green doesn't shift to a different color, because in the end, you're going to tell your software that this green is what you have to look for and make it transparent. And if it turns a little bit different shade of green or even orange due to a white balance shift, well, you're going to have an issue with keying that out, and it's just going to be a really hard time to get that to stay, transparent in the end. So look for a camcorder that does manual mode. If you don't have a manual mode, you can go into a scene mode, just something that's more than just automatic for it. Now let's move on to chroma keys themselves. What are you going to choose? Green screen, blue screen, and where are you going to buy them? Well, of course, when it comes to green or blue, or even sometimes red, well, you want to sort of match what you're going to do. For a daylight balance scene or something bright in terms of production, you can get by with green, but you also have a lot more light. Let's say I wanted to put myself outside right now. Well, I have plenty of light which matches my subject here, and so I could put myself in a very bright location outside. However, it would look awkward if I put myself in front of a night shot scene at the middle of the night, and it just doesn't match dynamic-wise from the lighting on myself in front of this green screen or chroma key screen versus the background that we've composited myself into. So think about that. Your lighting has to be set to match what you're going to put yourself in front of. But in general, more light is always better because cameras love more light. So you have to think about what you're going to composite yourself into. Now, for night scenes or anything that's a little bit darker, you want to choose a darker color keying screen. So you want to maybe go with a blue screen. However, also think about what you're wearing that day. If your actor or actress or whoever you are in front of your camera is wearing green or blue, you don't want to choose a green or a blue screen because that's going to key out with the keyed effect. So you got to really think about what you're wearing, what your lighting is going to be like, and what you're going to be compositing yourself into. Now, where do you get a chroma key screen from? Well, there's multiple different sources like tubetape.com. However, I found Amazon to have the cheaper products out there for not too much. Cowboy Studios and other places do have third-party selling through Amazon.com. So you can get a chroma key like this for not too expensive, maybe under $50. You want to think about size, though. You want to get something that's wide enough that's going to fill the frame of your camera, but not something that's too big to manage. You also may want to consider a flat wall that you can pin this screen to, because you want to try to get every wrinkle out of it, and you may want to get a steamer to help with that as well. But also, you could also do a backdrop stand, which is 2 tripod supports and a bar that goes across the top that you can hang this from. Usually there's a loop that you can feed that bar through, and it's a really quick, easy way to set up any chroma key screen. So that said, let's move on to looking into lights and then software. With chroma keying, lighting is quite important because your overall goal is to get this screen behind you as evenly lit as possible, and there are a few ways you could do this. Let's start off with a higher end budget and work our way down. Right now I'm using two soft boxes, one to my left and to my right, and they're shooting from really far back. The reason why is because if I put them further back, they cover a wide area in terms of their light output, but they're also soft boxes, meaning they're going to put out a soft light. What does that mean? Well, if I put my hand closer, you could see the shadow, but notice how soft and diffused that is. You want to try to get a light source that's soft because if you're closer to your background or your backdrop, and it's casting shadows, if I put my hand up here, that shadow right there is going to be really, really hard to key out because that changes the sort of look and feel of that green. So you want to try to keep any shadows off of it. You could do that by stepping a few feet in front. I'm about 3 or 4 feet away from this chroma key screen, but it also helps if you have a smaller area to have soft lights like soft boxes, which you can also buy on Amazon. So another way you can go is these reflected umbrella lights. These also have a compact fluorescent style of 5600 or 5500K daylight balanced light bulb in them, so they don't get really hot like tungsten lights, but they also throw out a decently soft light. They're also more compact than the huge soft boxes that I use here. So a little bit more things to consider. They don't throw out as much light because they're reflecting off of things. I think soft boxes are still the most ideal way to go. Of course, if you're really on a tight budget, you can go with these clip-on dome lights that are about $10, $15 from Home Depot, Lowe's, any of your hardware or maintenance stores out there, and they simply are a dome reflector light. You could put a compact fluorescent bulb in them. I recommend something that's 55 to 5600K and 100 watt output. And so you got plenty of light, but also that's going to be a little bit harsh and throw quite a bit of shadow on your background or anything you're aiming these at. So you may want to get something that will diffuse it, such as a wax paper or diffusion paper from a professional lighting store online or around your area. Just something to diffuse that light to keep shadows off that background, because that is the overall goal, to keep that background as evenly lit as possible. So consider your lighting sources. You don't have to spend a lot to get an even light, but it does help to spend a little bit more, as is true for this overall process. Software choices. Where are we going to start? Because there are thousands of choices in terms of software. Let's cover some of the more basic ones that a lot of people know. Of course, we got Adobe has a few. Adobe Premiere Pro or Adobe Premiere Elements. They both do keying. Premiere Pro does a decent job. However, I think Adobe After Effects is more commonly used, and they got some fantastic keying software built right into it. So you can apply that, tell it that this green should be transparent, and then work on the edging, which we'll show you how to do in a few minutes. Of course, Sony Vegas is a good one. And of course, if you want to go more with a live keying for people like gamers who want to actually put themselves in the corner of the screen and they don't want to have a flat wall of color behind them, they want to actually have themselves embedded into the game themselves from a more dynamic feel, well, you can use software such as XSplit. And we're going to show you how to work with XSplit later to key yourself in. But first, let's jump back onto the desktop and I'll show you how to work with Adobe After Effects, Adobe Premiere, Sony Vegas, and a few other programs to show you how to remove this annoying bright green and put yourself into some more advanced compositing backgrounds. So to start off, I thought I would go and work with a very affordable program. Here we are working with Sony Vegas Movie Studio HD 11, and it is under $50, so it does quite a bit for that price. I figured it's not too hard to use and most people can afford it, so let's start working with this and show you how to do some basic chroma keying. So you can notice you have multiple different video tracks here that you can overlay audio or video on, and of course we get the green screen media up top here because we have to cut the screen out, and so we have to place something underneath it, which will be this bubble loop track, which is a royalty-free media clip from one of the main sources that I use. But either way, we're going to put myself in front of this bubble blue track. So where do we start? Well, of course, after we get our project media on the timeline, we go over to the video effects tab, and there's a chroma key here on the left here, and then green screen. We're going to drag green screen onto my camera footage, and once you do that, it actually automatically starts keying things out. However, we have some adjusting to do. So let's move this over and do step one, which is actually sampling our green. And we can't do that in this program, strange enough, without disabling the chroma keying here at the top. And then we also want to do another step, which is mute this track below, which has the bubbles on it. And we'll show you why in a minute. But first, let's go about selecting our green here, we'll select the eyedropper tool, and we'll go somewhere in the middle of an area here. It's a little bit dark on the right because my lighting wasn't perfect, and a little bit bright on the left. We'll choose a middle section here, which is a sort of mix between that. Also notice one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that I have a hair light, which is behind me over the green screen edge. It's casting a bright light on my hair and shoulders. This stops any green spill from bouncing off that bright green backdrop and back onto your shoulders, which will actually give you a cleaner image here on the edges when you start keying this out. So if you can get an LED light of some sort or fit a light behind you, it would be fantastic to have that little third point or 3-point lighting set up. If you guys want to learn more about 3-point lighting, let me know in the comment section below, and we'll do a video on that in the future. Anyway, moving on, we got our key color selected here. It's a little bit greenish blue. We could have maybe adjusted a little bit more, but let's reactivate our chroma key in here. Show mask only with this bottom area here, and now we have some adjustments to do with our low and high threshold. So we want to adjust our low threshold just until this black goes from that gray in the bottom right corner. We want that just to be pure black. So we don't want to go too far. If we go too far, everything starts keying out. They could be very touchy, and sometimes you have to mess with these settings a little bit at a time. Once we got the low threshold set, we go for the high threshold, and we want to turn ourselves pure white. Once again, don't go too far because once again, we'll get that white on the background. So just enough to get this set. And you could spend hours doing things like this and getting things perfect, but we're not going to do that. And if you feel that something isn't right, you can go back and step back a few steps, and we'll say that that's fine right there. So let's turn off the surface mask only. We'll unmute the bubble track so we can see that it actually is applied. And we got the sharp hard edge, which is maybe okay in this still frame, but if we start playing it, maybe we'll notice some things. So we can add just a little bit of blur to that edge, and if we boost this up quite a bit, you can see it really softens the edge, like on the hairline here. We'll really boost it up to show you what it does, and it starts cutting into the shirt. So maybe add maybe a 0.78 to this and nothing more. Now everything here can be animated, but that's another thing for another day as well. Note that the camera is stationary, everything is set to manual. We really don't have to animate any of these parameters because nothing has to change once it's set. So that's how we key in Premiere, or sorry, in Sony Vegas Movie Studio HD11. Let's move into Premiere because Premiere does a decent job at keying as well, and it does it quite easily. So the media here is in our timeline. We've got it in a sequence. We got on track number 2, which is above the bubble track, we got our media from the camera. So let's go about putting key light. We could search for it in the effects tab here. Key light goes to the camera's media here, and we'll use the eyedropper tool to select the media or the green screen media. So we've sampled our color. This is going to be adjusted from our effects controls tab here at the top. And the first we want to do is actually select this from composite to alpha channel, and you can see we've got some adjustments to do. Let's actually turn off that key and go for a little bit darker image. Actually put that back on composite and select. It's doing weird things. Let's delete my Chroma Key and re-put that on there. Sample my color, and we'll go for a darker area somewhere around here. Go back to alpha channel, and as you can see it by default a little bit better. So sometimes Premiere and the Adobe products like a darker sample out of the brighter sections of your key. So let's go over here to matte generation. We want to adjust our pedestal just a little bit more, and then our tolerance. Tolerance doesn't seem to be doing much. How about our shadows? Our shadows can be adjusted a little bit. And the transparency, there we go. So we got a decent edge on that. We go from alpha channel back to composite, which shows the final result. And looks like we could choke this and soften it up a little bit. So we go from matte generation to matte cleanup. And we got different things like soften, which we can apply just a little bit of softening to the edges. And we could choke it maybe a 0.5, which sort of brings in that edge. So if you have a little bit of green spill or haloing of green, as someone mentioned on Twitter earlier, this would be a great thing to apply as a little bit of choke, just to choke that in. But if we go too much, you can see it cuts out the edges quite a bit. So just a little bit, maybe even just a 1 or 2, and it should clean up most of that, but it all comes down to lighting and how you've originally shot things. And the hair light really fixes that green halo that you might get when you're keying things out. So that's how you got that done in here. It's all complete in Premiere and Sony. Let's go into After Effects because After Effects really does a great job here. We've made a composition or a sequence. In this case, it's called a composition. We've got the media on the top here from the camera, and underneath that, if we disable it temporarily, we've got the bubble track as well. So camera is number 1. Let's search for it and find key light 1.2, and this is CS 5.5. We'll apply that to our camera's media track here, and we can select with our eyedropper tool right around here, and then we want to go from final result to, let's see, I think it is screen matte. Yes, it is. I'm trying to remember how to do this. All myself, I haven't keyed out in a while, but it can be a lot of fun. So we switched our view to screen matte, and this shows once again what we have to do here. So we're going to go under our screen matte settings, and we want to clip our black and clip our whites a little bit. So not too far, just get that black background solid, and then the white, pure white. And then we can go from screen matte back to final result. And then we can see great things happening here. We can also go about choking this a little bit. In fact, there's no choke in this program, but there is if you search for choke on here. We can do a simple choker or a matte choker. We're going to go simple choker and apply that as well, and sort of close that down because they sort of apply this in a list. And we can add a little bit of choke and clean up that edge, not too much. You can go either way, go back really far or cut it in a little bit more just to get that edge where it needs to be. So maybe a 1.10 in this case looks to be good. And then of course, if you go back to the keyer, the ultra key in here, or key light, there's different things you can do to soften the edge. That's screen soften, shrink and grow the screen edge, and clip the rollback, and just a bunch of different things you can adjust. And screen pre-blur sometimes helps a little bit, but different things you can adjust and play around with to see what gets you the best results. So now we've done this for a post-production style setup, let's see how you can key out live. So for the last part of this tutorial, we're in a program called XSplit Broadcaster. An XSplit Broadcaster will actually allow you to do screen capture and video mixing, and then stream it out to a website such as Twitch or YouTube or whatever, and multiple different sources. However, it also has a live Chroma Key in it that you may find a little bit interesting. However, there are some flaws that you will find, and we'll show you these. So what do we have here? We got a simple background, which is a screen grab of a sort of a textured gradient. It goes from light blue to dark black. And then on top of that, we've got our webcam, and this is set here in the source or scene list at the bottom. So we'll scale up the webcam. We're using the Logitech webcam C920, and we're set at 1080p HD. So we got a great image here. Now, even with all the lights on this set, it's a temporary rig, so you got a lot of shadowing areas up here that we're probably not going to be able to key out. The more evenly you can light that Chroma Key screen behind you, the more you're going to have an easier time to key this out and lose any of the hard edges that might start cutting into you. So let's go over here on the screen and start adjusting our settings. We're going to select the webcam setting down here and go down to settings for that webcam. And oops, you can't move that or else it goes away, because that's how it is. So under these three tabs, you want to go under color. And if you had to make some adjustments here, you could do so. But let's go down to the Chroma Key section here at the bottom and set this to Chroma Key. Make sure the keyer is set to green. And we'll keep the anti-aliasing off for now. What we want to adjust first off is, of course, the tolerance. And we're going to move that down just until we see. And you can notice there's a hot spot right around here. That's from a light that isn't all too soft. If you wanted to, I've got one of those dome lights that I was talking about earlier. You can put some wax paper over it. It really does help. You may want to try a few layers of that and see how it goes. Don't use this wax paper, though, if you've got a hot light bulb in there. I'm using compact fluorescence. I could touch the bulb at any time if these lights are on. But anyway, let's bring this tolerance down towards the left a little bit more and see if we can't cut it out. So you'll notice if we bring it up a little bit, we still get the edge on like the side of the headphones here. But if we bring it down even more, then we start cutting into those headphones. So it's a balance. And honestly, webcams like this are good for keying. but you have to do it with the better software. In this case, the software that we're working with just isn't anything fantastic, and it's often true that these live keying softwares just aren't going to do all that well. So even with the effects applied here to smooth out the filters and the edges here, and it's honestly not working too well. And this is the best that we're going to get. We did fill the shadows that came up in this area, which is fantastic, but notice the edge of the microphone and such here. You still got those hard edges. Also, if I move my hand, it starts disappearing here, and that's just an issue that you're going to get with live keying software that really doesn't have a lot of parameters going for it. So you may want to spend more, and oftentimes when you're doing chroma keying and stuff like this, you're going to do it in a post-production setting. You're not going to want to do it live unless you have a really expensive, something like a broadcaster box that has this specific function in it and is made to do this. But oftentimes you're going to want to do this in a post-production setting and not live. So let's finish up this video and close things out. So there you have it, guys. How to chroma key to turn this bright, annoying green into something more powerful that will help you have more fun and spice up your productions. I'm Dave from Social Blade here. If you have any questions on this subject, post them in the comment section below and give me a like on this video so that I know that you've enjoyed it and it's helped you. Also, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already so you're sure not to miss any future content or live shows and all that jazz. All the links in the description below can be found to purchase some of the equipment here as well and learn more on this topic. But as always, guys, check out everything Social Blade related. We could track your YouTube stats, your Twitch.tv stats, and of course your Instagram stats as well. So check it all out at socialblade.com. Until next time, I'm out of here. See you then.